Okay, so here we go. So today is Friday, December 4th. We are in the very end of the calendar year, which also means we're in the very end of the sessions for both Congress and the state legislature. So here's what that means. So let's talk first on the federal level. So earlier this week, there was a bipartisan proposal. 9 senators made this proposal, and it is a bridge coronavirus aid package. It's totaled into $900 million, and you can sort of see a number of the places where I thought would be interesting for us to just clock in this proposal. I've bolded the word stages on the amount for $288 billion for small businesses. So we're working with our partners and we're still trying to figure this out, but we're pretty sure that refers to the advocacy work that the Save Our Stages and the National Independent Venue Association has been doing to make sure that independent venues have access to relief. But we will learn more. The other thing that you'll note is it continues to expand the unemployment insurance benefits, puts together some money for state and local governments, reopening schools, and then rental housing assistance. But here's the trick. This is only a proposal. It is not a bill. It's not a bill yet. So there's, like we're dealing with like things that are bills, things that are proposals. The House put together the HEROES Act. That is much larger than $900 billion. The Senate did first the HEALS Act, and then they did the HEALS Act 2.0, the skinny version, which was more than $900 billion, but certainly not as much as the House. And then the executive administration has their own thoughts about this. This is the whole conversation we sort of had before the election. And it doesn't look like in this lame duck session, we're seeing much by way of those negotiations kind of moving. We were glad to see that this proposal was put together because it might mean that some things are starting to move. And we also know that President-elect Biden, basically when he was asked to comment on this proposal, said like, that's an okay down payment. So he clearly is focused on more recovery and more relief efforts under his administration. So that is what is happening there. There is a action alert that should be in the chat. I don't have the chat open, but it is for the Performing Arts Alliance organization. They have a really nice little action alert that you can take that basically just says like, as the year is winding down, here are some protections that would really help the creative sector. Please include them. And I encourage you to do that. So the other thing that's happening on the federal level is that they have to pass an appropriations bill, right? So much like the state, which we'll get to in a second, the federal government has basically passed continuing resolutions to keep government going and keep government agencies running. And if they don't pass either the omnibus or another continuing resolution by December 11th, government shuts down. We really want to support the House version. And the reason is that it provides $170 million for both the NEA and the NEH. That's up from last year, which was at about 160 and a little bit more million. And so that's the version we want to support. And so you'll see in the chat, there's a link to the Americans for the Arts action alert if you'd like to take action on that as well. So then let's talk about the state. So yesterday, the conference committee issued their report for the fiscal year 21 budget. So as we know, House passes their version, the Senate passes their version, and then a conference committee comes together to negotiate the differences and come out with one version of the bill. We knew this going into the conference committee, right? We already talked about this, that because both the House and the Senate versions amounts and language related to the Mass Cultural Council budget was exactly the same, that there was not going to be a change, right? It was going to come out of conference exactly like that, and it has. So the both Speaker DeLeo and Senate President Spilka have said that they're hoping to vote on it today, so it can go to Governor Baker's desk for signing. And he has a couple of options. He has 10 days in which he has to either sign it, he can veto it, or he can line item veto it. And some of you more seasoned arts advocates know that in the past, oftentimes he will line item a couple of appropriations, including the Mass Cultural Council budget. And then the legislature has to go back and look and see if they want to override the governor's vetoes. And if for some reason that happens, which I'm knocking wood and crossing my fingers, the governor doesn't do that, we will work and advocate and probably turn it around really quickly. So I want you to just keep your eyes peeled for any action alerts that come from Mass Creative if we need to work to override any vetoes to the public investment in arts, culture, and creativity. All right. The other thing that is happening is that economic development bond bill. So as we've talked about a little bit already, but just in case as a little refresher, we're in the second year of a 2-year legislative cycle, which basically means that on December 31st, all of the legislation that was filed, that had hearings, that has been, gone through more than one committee process, has been in conference committee. If it doesn't pass, it goes away. And so the folks I'm talking to feel pretty confident that the legislature will do this economic development bond bill, but it might happen at the very last minute. So we're keeping our eyes peeled. It's still in conference committee. At the end of last week and beginning of this week, there's a couple of big bills that were still sort of sitting in conference committee and in negotiations. And the first of that big bills, the police reform bill, came out of committee and was voted passed by the legislature and is now with Governor Baker. So that's the same process that this economic development bond bill needs to go through. Transportation, and there's also an environmental bill. Those are the other two that are sort of really big bills that are still in negotiations. But you'll see in the chat, I've also included, I did a little bit of an update to this action alert so that it's a little bit more, I would say more immediate in terms of it includes some information from the Mass Cultural Council's economic impact survey that they released in October. And it makes it a little clearer about just how important it is for this relief, for them to include all of the authorized money that was put in both the House and the Senate versions. So feel free to write up a storm to your legislators. This is the time where we're sort of at the last minute. In my head, I'm seeing Indiana Jones like trying to grab his hat as the wall closes. That's the moments we're kind of in. So we do need to make sure our legislators know that we are paying attention and to also keep our issues top of mind for them. So feel free to share some of these with your networks and your communities, because we know that when legislators hear from more people, it rises to the top of their work. But right around the corner, I can't believe I'm saying this to you all, is fiscal year 22's budget. Can you believe it? So it is constitutionally required that Governor Baker, file his budget proposal in January. And then, again, this current year that we're in is a bit of an aberration, but if things sort of revert back to a normal cycle, we would then see the House Ways and Means release their version in March, Senate release their version in April and May, and then Conference Committee June, a little bit of July, get the final version passed, sent to Baker, and hopefully we're back on track. Here are a couple of things about the fiscal year 22 budget. A lot of folks that are fiscal analysts that are watching sort of our budget and our state revenues are more concerned about what state revenues are going to look like in fiscal year 22 than they were in fiscal year 21. So we breathed a sigh of relief. We wiped our brow with fiscal year 21 that the Mass Cultural Council and investment in the creative community was level funded from the year before. We're going to be watching really carefully about if there are any need for cuts in fiscal year 22, and we're going to need to work really hard as a community to make sure that not only does the Mass Cultural Council's annual budget, which, as you know, supports sort of the ongoing work of our communities, but that also there is relief and recovery money included in every place that we can. And that's one of the things that Mass Creative is working on day in and day out, is like looking for those places where we can advocate for more relief and recovery. So I've italicized this. I've made the font larger. Storytelling and case making is so essential. And so what that means is we are going to do two things. So the first one is, in January, we are officially working on Arts Ed for Mass Month. And our tagline for that is Arts Make a Whole Person. The reason that we are using January for Arts Ed for Mass Month is because that's when a lot of communities start to take a look and begin to develop their school budgets. And we want to make sure that in this moment when a lot of leaders are thinking, oh my gosh, how do we still balance budgets and how do we absorb these new costs, that arts education in schools does not get cut. We also know that the creative youth development field has been delivering essential services to the young people that they work with throughout this pandemic, and that they need relief and they need support as well. And so we're thinking about all arts experiences and connections in education that young people receive throughout their childhood and their adolescence, right? And so that's what we're really going to focus on in January. If this is like your jam, if you're super excited about this, G has put his email in the chat. Email him, because we're gonna do some highlighting stories. We're gonna have some toolkits about how you can get involved. And we just want to make sure that we are really lifting this up in the month of January. Simultaneously, because we can never do just one thing at a time, we're also gearing up for March, which we are calling Arts and Cultural Advocacy Month. And that's still a little bit in planning about exactly what that means. But what it really means, bottom line, is that we want to make sure that we are uplifting the stories of connection and uplifting the stories of need for our sector between basically January through March. And to do that, we are employing the dreaded Google form. It's just a way to help us organize the information. So there should be a link in your chat, and it is a form that we're asking folks to fill out. Basically, we believe at the crux of what we want to talk about is this, right? That the creative community since March has not stopped caring for and serving the communities that we hold dear, right? And we've done that in a lot of really creative and innovative ways. But we've basically been self-subsidizing that. And while people are desperate for connection in this moment and are extremely appreciative and really need the things that we are providing in terms of online creative projects, outdoor projects, those projects and that work won't be able to continue unless we receive significant relief and recovery. And so we want to make sure that we're sort of connecting those dots for the general public, right? So we want to make sure it's more sort of in the air and in conversation, but also for decision makers and leaders on the municipal, state, and federal level. So that is what we're going to be really focusing all of our efforts on, moving into the first 3 months of 2020. That doesn't mean we'll immediately stop after March, but that's sort of where we're focused, and that's where we really need your help. In the last couple of minutes, I have some exciting news. On Giving Tuesday, we were able to reach 50%. We actually went a little bit above 50% of our fall fundraising goal, right? You know that, or I hope you've heard already that we have a little bit of a goal to raise $5,000 by the end of the year from you all, from our community that we so treasure and we are so glad to work in partnership with. We need your help. We really do. We need, we're really dedicated to doing this work, but we do need some financial support in order to continue to do this work. And so if you haven't had an opportunity to give, please, there should be a link in the chat box. I hope you'll consider. I hope you might, if you are repeat, policy and action update Zoom attendees, maybe consider a monthly gift, like $5, $7, you know, maybe the cost of a very expensive latte once a month. That will help us continue this work and provide services like this for free. So that is my public radio appeal spiel. And then the other thing that I just want to mention is that we are going to go on a little bit of a hiatus. We are not going to hold a policy and action update in 2 weeks, right? So we're going to take the rest of December off. That does not mean we are not still working. It just means we're just not going to have our regular Friday call. Please be on the lookout. We will be emailing you as ASAP if new developments happen, and we'll also put those on social media. We know that that our work is only as effective as all of us being together. And so I also encourage you to share these links that we've included in the chat. We'll follow up as always with an email on Monday, but if you've got folks in your network who you think, my gosh, they are talking a lot about how worried they are about the creative community, but I don't think they know about ways that they can advocate, now's the time to share these resources with them. So I want to thank you. I want to say happy end of 2020. And let us all just like hold centered the idea that 2021 is going to be full of reimagination and recovery. All right. So have a good weekend. I hope you get outside and enjoy some of this crisp winter weather. Thanks so much.